Hey guys, it's Miss Dalis Reyes. Today we're solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So this is the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So we're going to use that formula in all of these problems. Okay, the first thing you need to know is that before you can use the quadratic formula, you want to make sure that you have your equation written in standard form. So ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So you want to make sure it's written like that so that you can identify the ABC. The a is the coefficient to the x squared, the b is the coefficient to the x, and the c is the constant. So in this problem, a equals 2, b equals negative 3, and c equals negative 14. So what I would do is I would start out by writing a skeleton of the quadratic formula. So basically it's an outline with everything except for the letters, because what you're going to do is you're going to substitute the letters inside. So in this first spot, if you look at the quadratic formula, that's the b. So our b is negative 3, so we do a substitution. In this next spot, right here, that's also supposed to be b, so that's negative 3. Right here is supposed to be a is 2, and this is c is negative 14. And right in here, this is a, which is 2. Okay, so it's really important that you put the parentheses because that's going to make a big difference whether your results come out positive or negative. If you put the parentheses, you won't make a mistake. All right, first thing I would do is I would go ahead and simplify as much as I can. So x equals, I am going to simplify this part, so that's positive 3. Rewrite the plus or minus, rewrite the square root, and then go ahead and simplify all of what's underneath the radical. And you could do that with your calculator. So you could just do negative parentheses, negative 3 squared minus 4 parentheses 2 parentheses negative 14 close parentheses. Okay, so that gives me 121. And then the denominator, 2 times 2 is just 4. Okay, so now you want to simplify as much as you can. Radical 121 is the same thing as 11. So what you have is x equals 3 plus or minus 11 divided by 4. Since there's a plus or minus, you're going to have to set up 2 separate problems. X equals 3 plus 11 divided by 4, and x equals 3 minus 11 divided by 4. And then you simplify both of those, so this gives you 14 divided by 4, which is 7 over 2. And then over here, 3 minus 11 is negative 8 over 4, which equals negative 2. So your solutions will be x equals negative 2 and 7/2. And if you take a look, our answers are in decimals, so you can divide out 7/2. That's the same thing as 3.5. So negative 2 and 3.5, answer choice B. Next problem. So first thing, you want to make sure that you have it set equal to 0. So I'm going to pass the 1 to the left side. So I have 4x squared plus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So that now I could identify my a, b, and c. A equals 4, b equals 4, and c equals 1. Remember, you're getting that from these numbers right here. Okay. Now I'm going to do the outline of my quadratic formula. X equals negative parentheses plus minus square root parentheses squared minus 4 parentheses parentheses, all of it divided by 2 parentheses. Okay, so inside of here is b, so I put the value of 4. This is also b, so that's 4. This is a, 4. This is c, 1. And this is a, 4. Now I'm going to simplify. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root over 2 times 4 is 8. Now I'm going to find the value of what's underneath my radical. This is also called the discriminant. You'll need to know that for future. So 4 squared minus 4 times 4 times 1, that gives you 0. Okay, and the square root of 0 is just 0. So now you have x equals just -4. You don't really need to add or subtract 0. So -4 over 8, and that gives you -1/2. So there's only one solution for this problem at -1/2. So the answer is A. All right, 14x squared minus 8x minus 30 equals 9x squared minus 9. First things first, you want to make sure it's equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract the 9x squared, and I'm going to add 9. So that gives me 5x squared minus 8x minus 21 equals 0. And then identify my ABC. A is 5, B is -8, and C is -21. Okay, now I'm going to do my outline. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Now I'm going to fill it in. This first one is b, so that's -8. Notice how there's 2 dashes there. That may or may not happen depending on what your value of b is. But yes, if it is a -8, you'll have a negative on the inside of the parentheses, and then that negative on the outside comes from the formula. So you'll have 2 there. Next, this one is -8. This is A, so that's 5, and this is C, so that is -21. And right here is A, which is 5. Okay, so now I'm going to simplify. X equals negative times negative is positive, plus or minus the square root of, let's see, so -8 squared minus 4 times -21. That gives me 484. All divided by 2 times 5 is 10. Okay. Since we are just looking for an approximate value, you can put this into your calculator. You don't have to simplify that radical. X equals 8 plus radical 484 divided by 10. So 8 plus square root of 484 gives you 30. And then divided by 10 equals 3. So that's one solution. Remember, you'll need to do it again with the minus. So x equals 8 minus square root of 484 over 10. So 8 minus square root of 484 is -14 divided by 10 is -1.4. So those are my 2 solutions. -1.4 and 3. And remember, you want to list it from least to greatest. Okay. Now take a look at these answer choices. In these answer choices, you see the radicals in them? See all those radicals? That's because it's asking you for the exact value. So it wants the solution shown as an exact value, meaning you're going to have a radical. You're going to still solve it out the same way. So 5x squared minus 7x equals 7. Go ahead and set it equal to 0. So I'm going to cancel the 7, so subtract it. So now I have 5x squared minus 7x minus 7. Identify your ABC. A is 5. B is -7. C is -7. Set up your outline. X equals negative parentheses plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay. Right here, b is -7. This is also b, so that's -7. A is 5. C is -7. And a is 5. So now I'm going to simplify. X equals 7 plus or minus these square roots. So I'm going to calculate that. -7 squared minus 4 times 5 times -7. That's 189 divided by 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, so radical 189 is not a perfect square, okay? You want to figure out how can you simplify that. So you have 7 plus or minus what two numbers multiply together to give you 189. So if you look at your answer choices, I see a 21 here. So I'm going to assume that one of these is 21, and I need to figure out what the other one is. So I'm dividing 189 divided by 21, and that gives me 9. So 9 times 21 gives me 189. And now I can switch out. Radical 9 is the same thing as 3. So now I have x equals 7 plus or minus 3 radical 21 over 10. And this is my exact value solution. So the correct answer is, let's see, 7 plus or minus 3 squared root of 21. The correct answer is D. And if you notice, all of these answer choices look very similar, so be very careful when you're making your choice. Make sure that all the signs are correct, all the numbers are in the right places when you're making your choice. Okay, negative 5x squared plus 10 equals 4x. Again, you need to set it equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract the 4x. That's my b term, so it's the middle one. So negative 5x squared minus 4x plus 10. You want to make sure it's in the right order before you identify your ABC. A is negative 5, B is negative 4, and C equals 10. Again, just as a quick reminder, A is the one in front of the x squared term, B is the one in front of the x, then there's the constant, and then it equals 0. Okay, so that's how you find your A, B, and C. So I have mine in the right order, I have my ABC. Now I'm going to use the formula, x equals negative parentheses plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, substitute my values. B is negative 4, so this is negative 4. A is negative 5, C is 10, and A is negative 5. Now I'm going to simplify. So I have x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of, put that in my calculator, parentheses, negative 4 squared minus 4, parentheses, negative 5, parentheses, 10. That equals 216. The denominator, 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Okay. Again, I'm going to have an exact value as an answer. And I know that because I see the radicals in the answer choices. So I need to simplify 216. So we're going to say 4 plus or minus what two numbers multiply together to give us 216. So let's see. 216, and I always like to start out with like the bigger numbers, like check to see if it's divisible by 36 is a perfect square. Oh, yay, it is. Okay, so it's divisible by 36. We got lucky because that was the first shot. 36 times 6 gives us 216. So radical 36 is the same thing as 6. So now we have 4 plus or minus 6 radical 6 divided by negative 10. So we're not quite finished. We need to simplify a little bit more. If you notice, 4, 6, and negative 10 are all divisible by 2. I also notice that the denominator has a negative, and I don't want a negative there. So I'm going to divide all three numbers by negative 2 so that I can simplify this a little bit more. And when I divide everything by negative 2, I get 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. And because of this plus or minus, this negative right here is not really going to affect anything when I divide. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. Radical 6. And then negative 10 divided by negative 2 is 5. So this would be my final exact value answer. So negative 2 plus or minus 3 radical 6 over 5. The answer choice is A. Okay, next one, negative 8x squared minus 7 equals negative 7x. set it equal to 0, so I'm going to add 7 to the left side of my equation. So that's negative 8x squared plus 7x minus 7 equals 0. A equals negative 8, B equals 7, C equals negative 7. And my outline, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Substitution, b is 7, b is 7, a is negative 8, and c is negative 7, a is negative 8. Okay, now time to simplify. X equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root. So in my calculator, 7 squared minus 4 times negative 8 times negative 7 equals negative 175 over 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. Now in the past, we've typically stopped and said, oh, look, the radicand is negative, so this is a no solution. But because we know about imaginary numbers at this point, we're going to go ahead and simplify it with our imaginary numbers. Okay, so we have x equals negative 7 plus or minus, I'm going to take out that negative as an I, and then I'm going to factor 175. So I'm going to see what numbers can I multiply, or can I divide 175 by? Let's see, 175 divided by 25, which is a perfect square, is 7. So 25 times 7 is 175 divided by negative 16. Okay, and radical 25 is the same thing as 5. So that leaves me with x equals negative 7 plus or minus 5i radical 7 over negative 16. And again, I don't want to have this negative down here, so I'm going to divide by negative 1. And so that's going to give me 7 plus or minus 5i radical 7 over positive 16. So my final answer, 7 plus or minus 5i radical 7 over 16, is D. Thanks for watching. Bye.